After World War II, the United States military had an arsenal that had just defeated empires. At the heart of it all was the M1 Garand, a rifle so good that General George Patton himself called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. But in the war's aftermath, the Army looked at its own small arms and didn't see strength. It saw chaos. GIs were stuck juggling 4 different primary weapons: the M1 Garand, the M1 carbine, the M3 grease gun, and the big old M1918 Browning automatic rifle, the BAR. This logistical nightmare of different parts and different calibers sparked a huge ambition to create one single perfect rifle to replace them all. The Army dreamed of a weapon that had the long-range punch of the Garand and the automatic firepower of the BAR, all fed from a modern 20-round magazine. It was a quest for a logistical silver bullet. What they got was the M14, a rifle that was, by some accounts, obsolete the moment it was issued. In fact, early internal DoD assessments were so critical that they questioned if it was even an improvement over the World War II Garand. This is the story of how the most powerful military on Earth spent years of research and millions of dollars to build a gun for the wrong war, stubbornly ignored what their enemies had already figured out, and created one of the most legendary failures in firearms history. To really get the M14, you have to understand the mess it was supposed to fix. Imagine the headache of supplying troops with .30-06 for the Garand and BAR, .30 carbine for the M1 carbine, and .45 ACP for the grease guns. The dream was simple and seductive: one rifle, one caliber. This new battle rifle would be chambered in a powerful new cartridge, the 7.62 by 51 mm NATO, and it would have a selector switch. That meant it could act as a semi-auto rifle for precise shots and a full-auto weapon for suppressive fire, theoretically taking over the BAR's job. The development of that 7.62 by 51 mm cartridge, which you might know as the .308 Winchester, is the real key here. U.S. Ordnance was obsessed with keeping the same power as the legendary .30-06 that served so well in 2 world wars. Thanks to better gunpowder, they could get almost the same performance out of a shorter, lighter case. This whole idea was driven by a belief baked deep into the Army's top brass that rifle fights were long-range duels between skilled marksmen. They imagined the next war playing out across the fields of Europe, where hitting a target 500 yards away was what mattered most.
This cult of power was a direct holdover from World War II. The M1 Garand had given GIs a huge firepower advantage over their enemies, who were mostly using bolt-action rifles. The Army was determined to hang on to that long-range dominance. So, when it was time for the brand-new NATO alliance to pick a standard cartridge, the United States threw its considerable weight behind the 7.62 by 51 mm. While it was a collaborative process, the U.S. was very persuasive, and their choice was adopted in 1954, despite other allies showing interest in newer, more innovative designs. This decision to stick with a full-power battle rifle cartridge was the M14's original sin. It was a choice based on the last war, not the next one, and it would have disastrous consequences. While the U.S. was doubling down on raw power, everyone else, including its enemies and even some allies, was learning a totally different lesson from World War II. German engineers noticed something critical. Most infantry fights weren't happening at 500 yards, they were happening at 300 meters or less. For those closer distances, a full-power rifle round was just overkill. It produced way too much recoil, making automatic fire from a light rifle basically uncontrollable. Their solution was revolutionary: the Sturmgewehr 44, or STG-44. It fired a shorter, intermediate cartridge. It was less powerful than a rifle round, but way more powerful than a pistol round. The STG-44 proved how effective this idea was. A soldier could carry more of the lighter ammo and could actually control the weapon on full auto. Now you'd think U.S. Ordnance would have been all over this, right? Nope. They saw the German design, but they weren't impressed, staying loyal to their long-range marksmanship doctrine. The Soviets, on the other hand, were paying very close attention. They quickly cooked up their own intermediate round, the 7.62 by 39 mm, and the gun to fire it, the AK-47. This huge disagreement on ammo philosophy set the stage for America's next rifle competition. The trials basically came down to two main contenders. On one side, you had the T-48, which was an Americanized version of the Belgian FN Failed. The Failed was a fantastic rifle that would go on to be adopted by over 90 countries, earning the nickname the right arm of the free world. On the other side was Springfield Armory's T-44, a rifle that was, let's be honest, a modernized M1 Garand. It had a detachable magazine and a selector switch, but its guts, the action, the gas system, it was all Garand.
The trials were brutal, testing the rifles in everything from Arctic cold to desert dust. Both guns did pretty well, though the early FALs had some trouble in the cold. In the end, the choice came down to a few things. The T-44 was about a pound lighter than the FAL. It had a simpler gas system, but maybe the biggest factor was that it was an American design. There was a ton of political pressure and national pride riding on adopting a rifle from the nation's own Springfield Armory. The Army also thought, wrongly it turns out, that they could make the T-44 on the same machines they used for the M1 Garand, saving a bunch of time and money. On May 1, 1957, the T-44 was officially adopted as the U.S. rifle M14. America had made its choice. It chose tradition over innovation and raw power over controllable fire. The M14 was supposed to be the start of a golden age of simple logistics and awesome firepower. The reality was a production nightmare. That hope of using the old M1 Garand machinery? Total fantasy. Contracts went out in 1958, but the first rifles didn't even trickle off the Springfield line until July 1959. Right from the start, the program was a mess. Early rifles had catastrophic quality control failures. We're talking receivers cracking and locking lugs shearing off, a soldier's worst nightmare. Once they finally sorted out the metal problems, another shocker popped up. A huge number of rifles couldn't even meet the Army's minimum accuracy standards. In some tests, almost half the rifles failed. These delays meant the gun was painfully slow to get to the troops. By the end of 1961, only the 101st Airborne Division was fully equipped with the M14. The program was years behind schedule and way over budget, with each rifle costing about $104, a hefty price back then. Ultimately, only about 1.38 million M14s were ever made between 1959 and 1964, a far cry from the numbers planned. And just as the M14 was struggling to even exist, something else was happening that would seal its fate. In 1957, the same year the M14 was adopted, a small company called Armalite and its brilliant designer, Eugene Stoner, were working on a new, truly lightweight rifle. Stoner's AR-10 was radical, using aircraft-grade aluminum and plastic furniture. It quickly evolved into a smaller version, the AR-15. Chambered for the new high-velocity 5.56 by 45 mm cartridge, the AR-15 was light, futuristic, and did everything the M14 couldn't. It had low recoil, light ammo, and controllable automatic fire. The difference between the two rifles, one a steel and wood antique from the 1930s, the other a space-age weapon of aluminum and plastic, could not have been more obvious. The stage was set for a showdown, and the proving ground would be the jungles of Southeast Asia.
Vietnam was the M14's trial by fire, and it failed spectacularly. The very things U.S. Ordnance loved, its powerful round and long-range accuracy, turned out to be huge weaknesses in the close-quarters combat of the jungle. First off, the rifle was just too big and heavy. At over 11 pounds loaded and more than 44 inches long, it was a beast to haul through dense jungle. The traditional walnut stock, while pretty, was a terrible choice for Vietnam's humidity. The wood would swell and warp in the constant moisture, ruining the rifle's accuracy, the one thing it was supposed to be great at. Fiberglass stocks were eventually made to fix this, but they weren't common before the rifle was already on its way out. The ammunition was another massive problem. A soldier could only carry about 100 rounds of the heavy 7.62 millimeter ammo. In contrast, a soldier carrying an M16 could carry over 200 rounds of 5.56 millimeter for less weight. In a war defined by sudden, violent ambushes, how much lead you could throw downrange was often more important than how powerful each bullet was. The M14 and its 20-round magazines just couldn't compete with the enemy's 30-round AK-47s. But the M14's biggest, most glaring failure was its full auto mode. The one feature that was meant to replace the BAR made the rifle a danger to its own user. The recoil from that powerful 7.62 millimeter cartridge was ferocious. On full auto, the M14 was practically uncontrollable, climbing so violently that only the first shot had a prayer of hitting anything. Soldiers said it kicked like a mule. The problem was so bad that by 1963, most M14s were issued with their selector switches permanently locked on semi-auto, completely defeating the whole point of its design. By the early 1960s, field reports were grim. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, a man obsessed with data, saw the writing on the wall. The M14 was the wrong tool for the job. In head-to-head tests, the AR-15 ran circles around it in the real-world scenarios soldiers were facing. On January 23, 1963, McNamara ordered a halt to all M14 production. The M16 became the standard service rifle starting in 1964, and by 1967, it was replacing the M14 across units in Vietnam. The M14's reign was over, earning it the dubious honor of being one of the shortest-lived standard-issue rifles in U.S. history. Even though its career as a standard infantry rifle was a bust, the M14's story doesn't end in the jungles of Vietnam. The same things that made it a terrible assault rifle, its power, its range, and its accuracy when it was built right, made it a fantastic choice for a different job, a designated marksman or sniper rifle. Even as the M16 was taking over, the Army knew it still needed a precision long-range weapon. Instead of starting over, they looked back at the M14. Armorers started hand-picking the most accurate national match-grade M14s, tuning them up and fitting them with scopes. This new setup, designated the XM21, was in the hands of Army snipers in Vietnam by 1969. In this new role, the M14 was a star. Its 7.62 millimeter round could reach out far beyond the M16's effective range, making it perfect for taking out enemy snipers and other high-value targets. The M21 Sniper Weapon System, as it was officially called, served as the Army's main sniper rifle all the way until 1988. But wait, there's more. When American forces went into Afghanistan and Iraq in the 2000s, they once again found themselves in long-range firefights where the 5.56 millimeter round sometimes just wasn't enough. A 2009 Army study even noted that half of all firefights in Afghanistan were happening at over 300 meters. So, in a stunning reversal, thousands of old M14s were pulled out of storage, given new fiberglass stocks, modern optics, and other upgrades, and reissued as designated marksman rifles. The old battle rifle, once thrown aside as a failure, found a new life on the 21st century battlefield. The M14's journey from grand ambition to spectacular failure and surprise redemption is one of the most fascinating stories in military history. It's a perfect case study of how military doctrine, politics, and technology can crash into each other. If you enjoy deep dives like this, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss what's next.
And let us know in the comments, was the M14 a flawed masterpiece or just a mistake from the start? In the end, the failure of the M14 wasn't just the failure of a gun, it was the failure of a mindset. The U.S. Army clung to a vision of war rooted in the past, obsessed with long-range power, even as real-world combat was getting faster, closer, and all about volume of fire. The M14 was an answer to a question the battlefield wasn't asking anymore. It was an evolution of a World War II legend, adopted at the exact moment a revolution was happening. Too heavy, kicking too hard, and built for a war that never came, the M14 was quickly eclipsed by the M16. Its brief run as a standard-issue rifle is a testament to how badly it missed the mark. And yet, its surprising second act as a sniper rifle proves that even a failed design can find its purpose. The M14 remains a controversial but enduring icon, a powerful, handsome rifle born from a flawed idea, and a lesson in steel and walnut about the danger of always preparing to fight the last war.